Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, friends, and welcome back. Today, we're going to start out with a question. What are you waiting to give yourself permission to do? We tend to be really good at following rules, at really understanding the order that we're supposed to go in often responding to authority, because we are used to incredible order and hierarchy, right? That is how we learned medicine. That is how we competed through the rigor of getting into medical school and then perhaps a residency, right? Is knowing the system, knowing the steps, getting permission, applications, right, are a form of that, and completing all the tasks so that we have permission to go and do. But when we are in charge of the rest of our lives, we are still constantly seeking permission often, even without naming it. And if you are someone like me who has struggled with boundaries and people pleasing, my friends, I am talking to you. And there are some common themes that come up, right? Where we are wanting something to be different. And that might be the way that we schedule patients. It might be the FTE that we work. It might be we're trying to get out of, kind of burnout mode. Maybe any number of things. Perhaps we want to cut down our FTE. And there's things that are there that we are waiting on permission to do. Now, we might be waiting because we think, I don't have seniority for that. We might be thinking, well, I haven't sort of proven my worth to the group for long enough or hard enough. And I need to, earn more loyalty points, as it were. We might think, I don't really have the social currency for that, right? I am not liked enough to be able to ask for that. I'm seen as difficult in some way. Raise your hand if you've been called difficult. My friends, I'm with you. Maybe you don't feel like you're expert enough to get whatever it is that you're asking for or wanting, right? There are many, many things that we don't feel like we have earned the right to be able to take whatever step or have whatever it is that we are wanting, right? We are waiting on permission. And so often we have never even tried asking in the first place, right? We're just kind of waiting for permission to be granted. Now, if we think about our training, if we think about the way that medical school and residency unfolded, there were steps that we had to take, right? There was studies to do. There were tests to be passed. There were things that we needed to do. And when we did them at a sufficient quality and quantity, right, then we were sort of passed through, right? Eventually, there has to be a decision. Does this student graduate or do they not graduate? Have they done enough demonstration that they have learned the skills and we're going to move them along or not? When it comes to the rest of our lives, though, our work in our careers, there aren't a lot of things that are like that. If you are trying for a promotion or you are applying for a new position, you are, thinking about opening your own practice, right? There might be some events that you have to meet criteria and it's either a yes or a no. But a lot of the time, we are just sort of moving along, spending our days seeing patients, providing care, waiting for permission for something. And yet, again, so often we haven't even asked. So let's dive in a little bit deeper and figure out, why do we keep getting stuck? So let's really look at this and think about the trap that we get stuck in, the permission trap, if you will. There's something that we want to set a boundary around. That might be, I want to be able to leave work on time. I want to be able to say no when something doesn't serve me. I'm constantly getting double booked. I'm constantly being asked to take extra shifts, and I want to be able to say no. Very often, we are getting really caught up in our own thoughts about it and looking for external validation, right? We are thinking, well, I can't say no again because I don't feel like I've earned it in some way. I don't feel like I'm expert enough. I don't feel like I have seniority. And sometimes we've never even tried. We're just still in our brains thinking, oh, I can't do that, right? I have to say yes. Um, Sometimes we have tried saying no. Sometimes we've tried setting a boundary and we've been rejected. Certainly, we can have many experiences like that. And sometimes it sort of comes out of nowhere where, we're always saying yes, 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 and then we say no, and the system is not they have no idea, because we've never said no before. It never occurred to them that we could say no, right? And then they got all up and about it. But so often we are getting stuck on our own, thinking that we can't set permission, we can't set boundaries, right? That we have to have explicit permission from someone, perhaps in writing, perhaps some kind of cachet with someone, right, in a position of authority. Um, and it's harming us, right? This inability to even sort of conceptualize or ask for help or be able to set boundaries is definitely harming us. But, when we are stuck in our own thoughts and we are waiting for that external validation to come, my friends, it is not coming. There is no point where people are going to come up to you and say, you know what? We think you've been here long enough that it's okay if you start saying no to joining committees. You are so excellent at seeing patients, and we know that you're tired, and so we would like for you to cut down on your FTE. We think that we have been withholding your ability to have medical assistants work with you and support you for long enough, and now you've earned the right to always have a medical assistant, right? These things, my friends, are not going to happen because the systems benefit from us being okay with not having boundaries, with us being okay, and okay in air quotes here, us continuing to perform at a high level with inadequate support, with an inability to set boundaries. Our systems benefit from this. And there is no world where they're going to wake up and magically think it's a good idea to offer you the ability to do less, the ability to say no, the ability to set boundaries. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a clear cut black and white issue. I'm not saying that they don't get pushback or that it's inappropriate. All I'm saying is that nobody comes and taps us on the shoulder and says, you know what, you've been working really hard, and we just decided we were going to cancel all your patients next week. And here's, tickets to Hawaii. You go have a great time. It's not going to happen. There is no amount of good deeds that you could do that is going to be the outcome. And we have to get out of our heads and our internalized thoughts that we have to earn permission if we are going to start making steps towards being able to live the lives that we want to have. So that is a major theme that I see over and over again in the physicians that I'm working with, is this idea that if I'm good enough, if I work hard enough, if I sacrifice enough, then I will at some point earn my place. I will feel good enough. I will feel validated. I will feel worthy enough to get the things that I want, which is more support, more rest, more time off, a lighter patient load. No, it's just not going to happen. There's another factor at play here that has to do with socialization. Now, we in medicine are socialized to take care of others, right? That is, the role. A lot of people hate the term provider, right? But as physicians, we are one type of provider of healthcare services, right? And care is another word, right? That is always in that. We would call it healthcare, not health knowledge. We call it health care, right? As such, right, systems work to suggest that we should be indefatigable. Did I say that right? I think so. That we should constantly just be able to do more, do more, do more, to not need rest, to not need water, to not need bathroom breaks, right? Um, we will always go back to the story where in one of my groups, we were talking about how we spent the noon hour, right? And one of my patients said, or one of my clients rather, she said, oh yeah, that hour in the middle of the day where I'm not scheduled to see patients, and we were like, what normal people call lunch? Uh-huh. Yeah, we know that, right? I want to highlight here, though, something that absolutely makes a difference. So, we are socialized in medicine to care for others. We are particularly socialized as women and as women in medicine, right? Socialized as women from a young age to care for others, and socialized as women in medicine to be self sacrificing even more. We ought to feel lucky to be here alongside the men folk doing medicine because for such a long time we were excluded, right? We ought to feel grateful to be able to spend long hours working and caring for the good of humanity. And we should want to do so without being paid, without being paid the same as our male colleagues, without being able to set boundaries, because don't we want to do the most good we can for the humans who need us? We are expected to um, apologize frequently, right? To not take up space, to not make a fuss, to be team players, right? That's something that gets thrown at us a lot, right? You're not being a team player because you aren't, taking extra call like the rest of us because we can't hire another person when three people have left, right? You're not being a team player if you don't pick up their shifts. You're not being a team player if you can't magically make extra time appear because so and so is out on some kind of leave and we all just have to suck it up rather than hire a locums person, right? There are so many instances like this that show up. And we are socialized to continue to suck it up, to continue to work with very little compensation. And often, if you are asked to do extra shifts, it is not reimbursed in some way. Sometimes you're not paid to be on call. Sometimes you don't get to trade the extra call that you're taking, and someone's going to take your shift later, right? And there are so many different examples we can point to, but we have to recognize that part of the struggle in boundaries, part of the work that we have to do in learning how to give ourselves permission is to recognize this extra layer of self-sacrificing that we have been socialized to, and to understand that that is a part of our lived experience. The permission that we seek is wrapped up in the confidence in our own worth, of course, as humans, our own worth in terms of our contributions to the work environment, the medical care that we provide, to the clinic, to the hospital, whatever that situates, to our patients, whatever that looks like. The permission that we seek is actually having confidence in our work and the courage to act on it, right? we have to give ourselves permission. We have to see ourselves as worthy, even if that is new and challenging work for us. And we have to actually act on it in order for ourselves to sort of get through this work. Now, there is a lot in there. And as I was putting this together, what just kept coming up to me is the trauma that so many of us carry around having been sometimes bullied, sometimes made to feel that we are less than. And sometimes, of course, that could have come from childhood. It could have come through your medical training. It could come from experiences that you've had where you've tried to advocate for yourself, where you have tried to communicate, I am not okay. I need help. I need support. And you have not gotten it. Right. And as professionals, we are expected to tough it out. And we know the harms that that has done. So I want to call out here that especially if you are someone who has experienced any of what I'm talking about as trauma in your body, whether you've called it that or not, as a very challenging experience that really gets to your core, please, please get support and help as you start learning how to do this. Now, not all of us struggle with it at that deep level, but all of us deserve to get help and support as we are learning how to set boundaries, as we are learning how to take care of ourselves, to advocate for ourselves. We all deserve that. But if you are someone who has experienced any of this as trauma, whether or not you've faced true danger and harm or psychologic danger and harm, which I would argue is as serious as physical harm and threats. But of course, with this extra layer of being heavily internalized, right? If this is you, please get help and support with someone who can work with you, support you, hold space for you, so that you have what you need to heal this. It is not your fault if you have experienced any of this as trauma. And again, as we've talked about many times before, and I could probably talk about for a long time, we have underappreciated the role of trauma in the perpetuation of burnout and how that keeps us stuck. So I'm going to stop there because, again, I could go on for a long time about that. But just to say, if as we are continuing the conversation here, if you feel like I can't do that, it's not okay in this deep sense, please get help and support. I promise you that you deserve it. All right. So let's think a little bit here. We've identified that we get stuck in our own thoughts. And sometimes we won't even, have asked for what we need. We recognize that we are socialized to be self-sacrificing and to be team players and to give to others. And shouldn't we be so lucky that we're here? Let's talk a little bit more about what are the things that we're afraid of as we start to work on setting some boundaries, as we learn to start taking care of ourselves. What are we afraid of? We're afraid of conflict because we've been taught not to rock the boat. We don't want to be seen as difficult. We're afraid of judgment. I don't know of the equivalent of the B word when it comes to men. We probably would just call them a jerk, right? That's a different connotation than when the B word is used in professional settings, right? And again, probably our managers or our leaders, are not calling us that in front of patients and staff. I certainly hope not. But let's be honest, we get labeled with that. And I'm just going to say the B word just in case you got kids listening, because I know that happens sometimes. I do my best not to swear, friends. I love to swear. I try not to swear here. But we're afraid of judgment. Sometimes that judgment is having to do with another thing we're afraid of, which is not being seen as nice. Sometimes the judgment is, who does she think she is? Not being seen as capable, not being seen as good enough, right? But there's a lot of fear of being judged. that we carry with us, and that absolutely contributes here. We're afraid of being wrong in the decision that we're making. Many of you have probably had conversations where you have tried to change your FTE, usually to go down, and you might be asked, well, are you sure about that? Because if you drop your FTE, we can't guarantee that you'll ever be able to increase it. I just, I hear and I feel that just even as I said it. I have had several people come to me with that story where these physicians feel like they are so burned out, like they're struggling, right? They want to cut down their FTE because they can't even see straight, right? And the message back from leadership is something like, well, are you sure about that? Because you may not be able to increase your FTE later. My friends, there is more than enough FTE to go around. Yeah, it's sometimes true. Sometimes, maybe you might not be able to work more there at the time that you ask for it. But we all know that there is plenty of work for all of us to do. Now, if you are some crazy sub specialist and you are the world's leading expert on disease X and medicine Y comes along and it has just cured disease X and so it does not exist anymore, yeah, maybe you're going to have to go back and I don't know, start dealing with other diseases. I'm not sure that that scenario exists at all. There is always enough sick people for us to take care of. And I am very confident that if you want to work more, you are going to be able to find it. Again, in the perfect scenario, maybe not. In that same clinic or hospital, maybe not. There is enough work for all of us. And so I really hate that argument. It's such gaslighting, right? And it's fear mongering coming back at us. No wonder, my friends, we struggle because we're so used to that garbage. Okay. Do you see how easy it is for me to get stuck in all of these things? Oh, man, I just feel like I'm full of stories of my own experiences, of course, but also just the garbage that we hear from other physicians, from clients, from people who face all kinds of challenges and have been fired in stupid ways, have been penalized formally or informally for very reasonable human things like wanting to work less. Anyhow, so there are a lot of things that we are afraid of, right? That keep us from giving ourselves permission to set boundaries. And the last thing, which I touched on just a moment ago, is fear of not being nice, right? Again, that's part of that socialization piece. There is the part of the socialization that keeps us feeling like we are always, needing to serve other people. But baked into that, right, is also the perception to be, we need to be seen as nice. You could say that that's kind of the opposite of the judgment of being the B word, but it's also just, again, kind of more than that. This idea, right, that we need to be nice, that we need to be easygoing, that we want to be approachable, right? How many of you are the nice one in your clinic that all of the nurses go to with their questions, even when it's not your patient, right? Again, raise your hands. Yeah, me too, right? If you are the nice one, if you are the approachable one, it becomes this thing that you're trying to defend. And we worry about losing that title because it feels like something that defines us. It might feel like that's the thing I'm expert in, that's the thing that people value in me, right? Is that I am the nice one. My friends, you are worth more than just your title of being nice. It is okay for you to not let that fear of not being seen as nice hold you back from getting what you need. I'm not gonna lie, right? And say that that's easy because I don't think it's easy. That is absolutely something I have struggled with. I still struggle with it because it pops up, right? We want to be seen as nice. We want to be seen as helpful. We want to be seen as thorough and, always able to answer questions and always available. And we just can't do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's just not possible. I don't know about you, but I know also for me, right, is that I will feel kind of peopled out at some point, right? And sometimes that happens in the day, sometimes that happens over the course of the week, right? But we're only human. And so we have to recognize, what are these fears? How are they affecting me? How are they contributing, right, to me being afraid to give myself permission and to not be able to set boundaries that I need? So we've identified a lot here. And I think it's really important that we take some time to consider, how do I start to give myself permission to set boundaries? Give myself permission to set no. Give myself permission to do what it is that makes sense to me when I'm so used to doing what is expected of me by others, right? Let's go through a few things that you can start doing in order to make some progress. So we've done some work, right? We've seen where our thoughts get in the way. We've seen where our socialization is a challenge. We've seen that fear holds us back. All right. Now we need to say, what do I need to do to start making forward progress? So one is, you have to start naming your needs. This, again, can be really loaded for people. And sometimes it plays with your internal sense of, your niceness or your capability or your worth, right? I was just naming, right, that I get kind of peopled out. I think that I could be described as an extroverted introvert. I do feel like I need a lot of sort of offstage time to recover and rest, because I do get very drained, but I can also get very animated and excited by conversations that I'm having, right? I know that I need a certain degree of quiet time and peace. And sometimes that is quietly running errands on my own or sitting in a coffee shop on my own. It's those moments that you take in your car before you go into work or before you come out of work and in the house. I know that my husband would love for us to spend more time together. And sometimes I'm just like, I have just been with people all day, and you are a people, and I just cannot, right? We have to be able to name our needs, right? So that might be need for quiet time. It might be need for connection with a human that you are not a professional caregiver for, or caregiving outside. I mean, you might need connection with your family, right? You might need connection with your kids, your partner, your dog, your cat, right? And to really feel like you get to spend some quality time with them. But you might also need to have connection with the people who are not those humans, right? Not your patients, not your family, but other humans that you love, other humans who are peers, friends. They might be colleagues, they might be random people. One of my friends had connected with me after a long time I hadn't heard from her. Um, and she knew that I was at this clinic years ago, but she had forgotten. But she randomly ended up in a kayak with someone that I work with at the clinic. And she was like, she texted me and she's like, "Oh, I forgot. I forgot that you work there. And I think I knew that before." Sometimes you're randomly in a boat with someone, right? And you get a chance to connect. So what are the other things that you need? Maybe you need more quiet time. Maybe you need more support. Maybe you need more movement, more healthy food, more sleep, right? What are those things? Um, Sleep is a big one, right? How many of us are not getting enough sleep, and we tell ourselves, well, I'm someone who can do okay on very little sleep. Okay is probably not good enough, my friends. Okay got us through residency. Okay gets us through call. but we need to be able to turn off and we need to be able to get adequate sleep. It is literally harming us to not sleep. Okay. So name your needs. Next, don't pre-reject yourself. So there are things that you want, things that you need, places where you would like to set boundaries. And if you're constantly telling yourself, nope, I can't have that, and filling in the excuses, right? We are pre-rejecting ourselves. Nope, I can't ask to lower my FTE because they're going to say no, because they need me, because we're understaffed. If we can't even ask, if we can't even have that on the radar, then no one knows. No one is aware of how we're doing and what we might need. Yeah, it's true that maybe, your clinic says, I'm sorry, we can't reduce your FTE right now. At least you have opened the conversation and you can start to have communication. Now, I'm not suggesting, right, that we stop there in advocating for ourselves, but if we just tell ourselves, no, we can't have that without even having a conversation, without even asking, right? That pre-rejection keeps us very stuck. And I think a lot of us do that to ourselves far more often than we would probably ever be aware of or admit. So don't pre-reject yourself. Open the conversation. Start telling people, kind of what it is that you want to do. And just recognize, as we have spent the rest of, this past 30 minutes talking about, recognize that it is difficult, but you can do it because you can do hard things. Oh gosh, I'm getting all self-helpy here. All right. I guess that's what I do. I don't know. All right, what's next? So I want us to practice stating what it is that we want instead of asking. So instead of asking, would it be okay if I said, no, I can't do call this weekend? Say, I'm not available. I'm not available to cover that call. I am available next weekend. We don't ask. We have to start practicing stating clearly what is or is not okay. This is a new one for a lot of us. And again, it ties back to that, being afraid to take up space, being afraid to say no, that the fear of judgment, right? We need to feel confident in that what is important to us matters. I can't take call that weekend because whatever. Even if you don't have the because in there, that's another trap that we get into, right? Is over explaining. I'm not available that weekend, period. And we stop talking. Instead of asking, would it be okay if I said no? Mm-mm. No, we're going to say, I'm not available that weekend. When someone says, oh, Mrs. Jones checked in, 18 minutes late for her 20-minute appointment. What should I do? It's not, would you mind asking her if she'll reschedule? It's tell her she's going to need to reschedule. We just state it. Okay. We know what we need. We know what we want to say. We're going to practice using the language and being more declarative. That can feel very aggressive, and that's what it'll be called, right? Back to the B word. You're being an aggressive B. Instead of being called assertive, right? We're gonna have to decide to be okay with that because we don't get to control what others think about us, but we do get to control what we are willing to stand up for ourselves for. Because unfortunately, my friends, no one's going to do that stand up work for you. All right, so state instead of ask. And next is we need to allow for the discomfort. It is uncomfortable doing this work, right? We will squirm, we will fidget, we will feel like our voice shakes. We will second guess ourselves. We may, kind of run it through in our brain. I don't think that there is any way to start doing this work and not have there be some discomfort. There is a reason why we are here. We didn't just start thinking that boundaries were a good idea, my friends. We've thought that and known that for a long time. We've looked at people in our lives who are clear on their boundaries, who, are able to say no with ease and confidence. We've looked at them for a long time and thought, why not me? I don't know what that person's experience has been. Maybe they've done this work. Maybe they weren't socialized like I was. Maybe they just have always had a strong sense of confidence and self-worth. Good for them. My friends, I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to you. You and I are here talking about this together. And for so many of us, this discomfort sets off our alarm bells and we think we're doing something incredibly wrong. It is just part of the process. If you are someone who is constantly not having boundaries, constantly people pleasing, it will feel incredibly uncomfortable when you start advocating for yourself, when you start stating instead of asking, when you recognize, I am afraid of being judged. I am afraid of conflict. And you say no and you reject the other person's offer and you aren't, apologizing when you're practicing not apologizing. It's funny. I often find myself saying, I was going to apologize, and then I remembered that I don't do that anymore, but blah, 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 and then I kind of go on, or I'll just call out, I almost apologized there, but what I mean is, right? Because that humanizes it, right? When we do that. And I feel like so often that is in conversation with another woman, usually a patient, usually about someone my age, right? And there is a knowing between us because we know that we have been brought up this way. We know that we have been socialized to put others first. We know that we are meant to believe that we should always do for others first, right? But let's call it out. Let's recognize, okay, I'm not going to apologize, but here is, what is and isn't going to happen. Here's what is and isn't okay. Here are the options. All right, we went through a lot today, but I hope you can see that if you have struggled with boundaries, if you are someone who people pleases and you know you need to stop, but you haven't been able to really get started, I hope you can see how deep some of this runs and that there's a lot of layers to it. But no one is coming to hand us permission. We often need some support and some guidance in doing this because we have not done it before. You may have become more assertive and confident as you went along. I feel like a lot of us missed that class though, and we are still struggling with our worth to feel good enough. And we can see how that is all related to our socialization. Again, our socialization often as little people and our socialization in medicine, especially if you are a minority in medicine, a woman in medicine, um, and by minority, I mean anybody who's not in the majority as far as anything. That could be racial and ethnic minorities. It could be, sex and gender minority, right? It can be many different things. There are so many pieces to this. This is an episode to re-listen to and to go back to and think, all right, where am I getting stuck? Where am I waiting for permission to come? And I know that permission's not going to come. How will I start to recognize the things that I'm afraid of? How will I start to say, oh, yep, no, it's just my socialization speaking. I don't need to apologize here. I can still be polite, but I also am a full human being who has my own needs. How can I start to notice and name my needs? How can I start to state instead of ask? How can I not pre-reject myself? How can I start to allow that discomfort to be there so that I can make progress? I was talking with someone earlier who is going to start coaching with me, and we were talking about celebrating the wins, right? And part of that comes, in allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable as we are making progress and to recognize the little things along the way that show us that the work is working, that things are changing, right? We celebrate the wins because we know how much discomfort is there as we are working through this. My friends, I hope that this makes sense. I hope that this has given you some new ideas. If you would like to reach out to me, you can reach me at megan@healthierforgood.com. I would love to hear what it is that you're going to start giving yourself permission on. All right. And with that, my friends, until next time, take care.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.